If slavery never happened, then you would be in a grass hut.
Yeah.
Right? Well, we need reparations. Your reparations are that you get to live in America. You're welcome. You're welcome.
You get to have the Christian religion.
That's
live
right.
better than your ancestors.
The greatest moment in history for any brown or black country is the moment that the white man's ships arrive on your shore.
But this one takes the cake. He's about to blow, man.
Peace and blessing. Shalom. Now we have this pastor, and of course he says a lot of idiotic statements, but the fact that, you know, they believe that Christianity is a white religion. I mean, it is now per se, but when you look at real history, you know that our people started that religion or belief system. It all started in Babylon, the Babylonian Kemetic mystery religion, you know, a mixture of pagan beliefs, one world savior, etc. And of course, it got whitewashed like everything else. And the fact that this YT or Edomite or heathen believes that his people gave us that religion is absurd. He doesn't know real history. He's been spoon-fed the historical narrative. Black equals slavery, white equals slave master. Okay? And this is the buffoonery that a lot of these people in these churches teach our people. There should be no so-called black or Negro person in a so-called YT or white man's church, point blank, period. Because all their life they've been taught they were kings and queens. But when we look at real history, archaeology, and certain paintings, it tells or paints a different story. And the issue I have with this heathen or idiotic pastor is the fact that he goes on his platform or his podcast and talks all this bullshit, negative stereotypes, or overgeneralizes so-called black people. And to be quite frankly with you, on my page, I state there's no such thing as so-called black and so-called white. That is Freemasonry. It's a checkered board. Okay, we are brown, copper colored people, if we want to be technical with it. But the world is, or people like this are delusional, and they don't see the facts. Racism during the 14th, 15th century never fucking existed. Okay? So we're going to look at certain books and sources to debunk this pastor because he's a racist idiot who's been taught the slave narrative. So right here we're at Chat GPT, and it states Christianity originated in the Middle East. And I state the so-called Middle East because that's a modern or new term coined in the 19th century. Not in Europe. I repeat, not in Europe. And it was not originally a white religion. It was born among Afro-Asiatic peoples, Hebrew Israelites, and others from regions that included modern-day Israel, Palestine, Egypt, Ethiopia, and parts of North Africa. These were people of color, not Europeans. So right here it states Christianity began in the 1st century CE in the Levant, ancient Judea, part of the Roman Empire. Jesus or Nazareth or Yahweh and his earliest followers were Judeans from the so-called Middle East, Shemitic people who shared ancestry and physical features with populations of North Africa and Southwest Asia. So in other words, the Israelites or Jesus Christ of Nazareth or Yahweh, they were not pale-faced, nor were the people. Okay? So, I mean, of course, that pastor would say that because he's been taught the historical narrative and everything's been whitewashed. But he can live or die in his lie because at the end of the day, we know the truth. So fuck him. So right here it states number 2, early spread. Christianity first spread south and east, not north, into Kemet or Egypt, Ethiopia, and Nubia, Sudan by the 1st through the 4th centuries CE. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, one of the oldest Christian churches, was established in the 4th century, long before Europe became predominantly Christian. And right here it states African scholars, all, I repeat, all from North Africa and of African descent who shaped Christian doctrine. Okay. So to the right, we have the book African Presence in Early Europe by Ivan van Sertima, a real good book. It's kind of high, but a lot of good gems in that book. And right here on Chat GPT, it states, number 3, Europe's adoption. Christianity reached Europe later, mainly through the Roman Empire. Okay, Emperor Constantine, a so-called black man, I repeat, a so-called black man, made Christianity the state religion in the 4th century CE. So that pastor needs to humble himself because he sounds real idiotic saying the things that he states. He doesn't bring any sources or facts, and he can't bring anything because through the public fool's education system, all they're going to teach you is slavery and white master. Reading on, by this point, the religion had already developed strong African and Middle Eastern roots. So to summarize, Christianity did not begin as a European or white religion. Its founders and first believers were Afro-Asiatic people from the regions of modern Israel, Egypt, and Ethiopia. African Christians played a major role in shaping early theology and church structure. Okay, this is why when you find through the Crusades or certain periods to the dark Middle Ages or medieval ages, you see with the cross and the Moor's head because they were Christians. Stupid idiot, don't know what the hell he's talking about. Reading on, Europeans adopted it later, centuries after it already been established in Africa and the Middle East. Okay, so this is why we see a whitewashing of who the world calls Jesus or the apostles or even the original people, the Judeans, or who the world calls the Jews. So right here it states, argent cross of glues with 4 heads of Moorish kings in the quarters, known as the cross of Alcaraz. Gaspar Torres, a memorial of Aragon, 1536. According to the 14th century sources, the cross of Alcaraz traditionally originated with the Battle of Alcaraz, okay, as King Peter's battle shield, inspired by the legendary miraculous intervention of Saint George in the Reconquista of Huesca. The earliest depiction of the cross, that of the Chancery Seal of 1281, shows 4 Moorish heads with beards but no headbands or bandages. So we're going to look at this book, The Negro Rulers of Scotland and the British Isles. Okay. You see the star, okay, the Black Eagle. And then, of course, we're going to look at this book, African Presence in Early Europe, by Ivan van Sertima. Then this book, Undeniable Full Color Evidence of Black Israelites in the Bible, by Dante Fortson. And this is a new one I got. What Your School Will Never Teach You, Early Black History, Foundational Black Britain, okay, by Dr. Marie Charles, this lady right here, okay. The Black Rulers, Military Leaders, Clergy, and Moors Who Saved Medieval Europe. So right here we have an image of Leopold I, a mulatto, octoroon or quadroon, Holy Roman Emperor, and defender of the Roman Church. Right here it states, those who research the deep-seated hatred of whites towards blacks wonder whether having held blacks in bondage reap enormous wealth from their coercive labor and built a world-class economy and hegemony from them warrants such hatred from their overlords. In addition, a majority of people of color whose forefathers and foremothers were enslaved, whose parents and self are immured in poverty, devalued, and hopeless, are stricken with the Stockholm Syndrome, whereby they end up identifying with an oppressor more than themselves.
Fuck Black Wall Street. I'm so tired of hearing niggas talk about this past shanty town in the 20s. These niggas act like this was the black version of the NASDAQ. We's was stockbrokers and shit, man. Little do these uneducated ass niggas know that Black Wall Street has been rebuilt. And it's quite beautiful, to be honest with you. They're always bringing this shit up to try to prove a point about white people's violence on black people. Something, mind you, that does not happen today at the rate that it did in the past. But because niggas hate white people and always want to bring up something to use against white people, they bring it up all the time. Let's talk talk about the fact that black people burn down their own cities, destroy their own communities, and fail to manage and maintain the communities they live in. Let's talk about when black people burn down their own areas for a fucking fentanyl addict like George Floyd, burn down cities, Ferguson, remember, with Michael Brown, and the same thing with Trayvon Martin. Let's talk about when we do these things to our own selves. We always want to complain about the white man did in the past. What are you niggas doing today that's destroying us, our identity, who we are, our representation, our image? You do far worse and far more harm today than any white person ever could in the past, nigga.
Family, community, and race who systematically and overtly rejects them. As an explanation for this resentment-based hatred, Godfrey cites Apple's 1975 findings that European whites were once ruled and despotically oppressed by blacks who brought them civilization and Christianity. I repeat, 1975 findings that European whites were once ruled, and despotically oppressed by blacks who brought them civilization and Christianity. These blacks encompass Europe's nobility, who identified themselves as blue blood, actually descended from black Moor progenitors reinforced by inbreeding. Right here it states, a group of self-identified blue bloods are reflecting their European cousins among the distinguished light-skinned colored population in New Orleans, Louisiana. They bragged about their ties to European forefathers who settled in the New World and forged a racially mixed lineage. They appeared to look down upon mixed or more Afro-Court blacks or browns who have not achieved comparable socioeconomic status from inheritance or professional endeavors. Physically, like their European cousins, display veins close to the surface which appear blue in color, unlike darker blacks and browns. Prior to the post-civil rights era, these blue bloods monopolized elite positions and professions among African Americans. Back to the old world, the European royal families were a fixed mulatto race with brown and black complexions, with some looking more African, Asian, or white. The underclass white majority were called grays or pinks and looked down upon these blue bloods. The ruling Moorish lineage gave them privilege, defiled the underclass. Most of the white underclass European were illiterate, since education was a privilege privy to the black nobility who could afford tutoring and or admissions to Latin and Greek private academics. The liberal advocates of the Protestant Reformation would demand and eventually achieve publicly funded schools using books in the common language. Yet commoners were becoming more aware that the civilization and Christianity which thrived in Europe was ruled by black overlords.
You're welcome.
You get to have the Christian religion,
That's
live
right.
better than your ancestors
The
ever would
greatest
have.
moment in history for any brown or black country is the moment that the white man's ships arrive on your shore.
Respectively, the inbred European royal that ruled the state and church were kneeling down to icons and artifacts of a black god, messiah, disciples, and saints in shrines, inaccessible or remotely located from scrutiny by commoners. Right here. From 1760 onward, the notion of human races was created, keyword created, and promoted by white Europeans trying to undermine and overcome the despotic rule of their black overlords. Under the racist and xenophobic respective nations were defined by skin color. Whites were regarded as superior humans, while blacks were portrayed as being at the bottom of the human evolutionary ladder. To justify this perspective that is contrary to Godfrey's images of adorned mixed race royals, clergy, and faith figures were whitened, keyword whitened. Portraying this distortion of the truth as fact falls under the heading of revisionism. It was used to hide an important historical fact that Europe was ruled by a black identified nobility and royal elite. Right here, Godfrey's claims that the invention of scientific racism, taxonomy of the races, was necessary to verify white supremacy. Scientific racism hide that the French Revolution 1789 through 1795 represented exploited whites, overturning their black overlords. Racism that whitened fake portraits of black kings and queens is, in effect, a liberation ideology to free whites who were indoctrinated to believe that blacks were superior beings. Okay. The color line was installed in America to reinforce this ideology, resulting from prolonged African hegemony and resentment it entailed over whites. Okay. These resentful whites included the forefathers and foremothers of those who immigrated to America to escape persecution in a Europe ruled by black nobles controlling both the church and state. The nobility had maintained a protected status that engendered the loyalty of their white subjects by waging unnecessary wars and conflicts. Their popularity was based on quickly winning those wars and disguising the actual costs and lives and revenues to maintain illusion of success, as opposed to meeting the actual needs and aspirations of their subjects, including self-determination and self-rule. So now we're going to be looking at this book, Undeniable Full Color Evidence of Black Israelites in the Bible. Right here. Concept by Righteous Anna of the Most Holy Mother of God. Saint Anna, the mother of Virgin Mary, was the youngest daughter of the priest Nathan from Bethlehem, descended from the tribe of Levi. She married Saint Joachim, who was a native of Galilee. Okay. These are not so-called white people. Even Darius, okay. The winged sphinx from the palace of Darius the Great at Susa. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Daniel 5:31. Right here. Vision of John the Divine concerning Revelations 1:9 through 20, 16th century, located at Patmos, Monastery of St. John. I thought that pastor said they had to teach us Christianity, and when they came on here on boats, it was a blessing, right? Get the fuck out of here. So right here we have another one. Okay. Christ in majesty with symbols of the Evangelicus. Okay. Spain, 945. Right here. This is nothing but Isis and Horus. We'll get to that later in this book. African presence in early Europe. Okay. Virgin Mary house at the Jana Góra Monastery in Poland. Okay. Notre Dame. We see Isis and Horus, or Virgin Mary and Jesus Christ. Okay. The Black Virgins of France. Right here, the Black Madonna, Poland. Right here, the Black Virgin, Barcelona Cathedral. The original is said to have been made by Saint Luke in 54 AD. Okay. In the chapel of the 15th century, France. The Black Madonna, Switzerland, the 1400s. Okay, the Resurrection, the third quarter of the 16th century. Mount Athos, Greece. Right here, Pope Francis at St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. Okay. Okay, right here. The Ladder of Divine Ascent of St. John. Russian icons, 1650. Right here, detail of Abraham and his sons, including the penitent thief, 1600. Okay. Right here, Moscow Temple, 1688. Who's in rulership? Why are all these pictures depicted like this? Who's in rulership now? And you understand why they have the images that they have, right? The 16th century King Solomon from Volodya, Russia. I probably butchered that word, but look how he's depicted. King Solomon. Okay. 18th century. Okay. Need I say more? Transfiguration icon by Theophanes the Greek, 15th century. Need I say more? Okay. Right here, meeting of our Lord in the temple, meaning what? Master. Okay. Right here, this one's kind of funny. A kneeling nobleman before Black Madonna in Elzending, Switzerland, 1781. Okay. Right here, Prophet Elijah's ascent into heaven in the fiery chariot. Okay. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. The holy prophet, Nahum. Okay. Black Nazarene, district of the city of Manila, the Philippines. That's why they like Negroes over there a lot, I guess. I don't know. Okay. Now we're at this book, Foundational Black Britain. Okay. So right here, Normans, right? The Knights of the Round Table. Right here. Lawyer in the King's Parliament, governor in the election of sables. France was originally a black nation with its ancient traditions of law, trade, and commerce. Okay. Earring, hoop earring. Okay. The bandana. Right here. Memorial bearings of the bishopric of Francing. Okay. The crown. This complexion emblem of black German rulership. Okay. Southern Germany. See the evidence as kingship in North Cumberland and the African crown of Angola. Okay. This is a heraldic crest. The foundation of black German has been embedded with the sacred geometry. Okay. The cosmological concept. Okay. Germany. The black nobility of Germany preserved their ancient knowledge system and iconographic of heraldry. The double red crown rulers styled as branches present a powerful image of duality and nature as balance and harmony. Okay. France, Germany, Netherlands, and Belgium. All white nations today. You think black people never existed there according to their fake ass history. Okay, Southern Germany. Okay. Spain. In the previous video I did, okay, Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, okay. Okay. Portuguese, noble families. So right here, we're going to look at this book, True Myth, Black Vikings of the Middle Ages. Okay. So we're on page 304. The Dark Ages were dark primarily for white Europeans. Those ascendancy was dwarfed by the demise of the light that Rome had shined. The faceless black garbed monks walking through the gloom that we envision when the term Dark Ages is mentioned are the mythological representations of the actual black men and women who were still inhabiting major areas of Europe during the epoch. These men and women saw no darkness and moved about Europe attempting to reorder their lives after the turmoil, the dominance of the new Romans, and the invasion of the Huns under Attila had produced throughout most of Europe had waned. They were real and still numerous, with thousands of black Huns remaining in areas of Europe after the death of Attila, their presence foreboding a reclamation of Europe by black and dark-skinned people, and the death of the new Roman dream of a white Europe under their domination. In this regard, the true myth of the title of this work is aptly in accord with McRitchie's assessment that the Dark Ages in Europe were dark in a double sense, a double connotation. Some historians, however, attribute the darkness of the Dark Ages to the Roman Church, a belief I will not only comment upon briefly. After Roman Emperor Constantine, a so-called black man, convened the Council of Nicaea 325 AD in an effort to merge Eastern religious beliefs with beliefs in the West, the Roman Church in the West would eventually come to dominate Christianity. During or immediately after the Council of Nicaea, the books that would make up the Holy Bible were assembled, and religious writings from the East as far away as India were purloined or destroyed so that the Bible, authorized by King Constantine, would become the preeminent religious doctrine. These matters have been written about but are not widely known or disseminated because they would reveal that early Christianity was not the altruistic, peace-seeking, quintessential faith we have been taught to believe it was, but that it began in a militancy for the purpose of domination. Okay, the age of discovery in all truth was headed by the black monarchs. Okay, and this is why everyone around the world has the Bibles, believe it or not. They will never tell you that shit. Okay, along the militancy, torture, and forced conversion spoken of earlier regarding the Northern Crusades, Professor Hilton Homina, in a work entitled Mystery Man of the Bible, states regarding the beginnings of the early Roman Church. Okay, with the establishment of the church in the 4th century, all schools were closed, libraries demolished, research work banned, and science was branded as magic. Okay, so now we're on page 295. This is not to imply that all Christian Europe was white. With what has been presented in this work, it should now be easier for the reader to envision Europe as a continent of a mixed race people, generally lightning, strongly influenced by predominantly white-skinned Roman intelligentsia fiercely opposed to any new infringements by black and dark-skinned people into the continent it saw as theirs for the taking. The oldest and known representations of Jesus and Mary as white-skinned emanate from the 5th or 6th century, although they would not become more widespread until the Renaissance many centuries later, meaning what, the rebirth, and not become the dominant representations of these icons of Christianity until several centuries afterward. The unwritten imperative that good and inherently superior whites must always rule evil, inferior, dark-skinned people was disseminated from the Dark Ages onward. And pure white, virginal Mary became a representative of white women whose bodies should never again be glazed upon or defiled by dark-skinned men. Although in an article by Morton Smith entitled The Secret Gospel, the book your church doesn't want you to read, it is noted that fathers of the Christian church strongly opposed the worship of Mary because they were well aware that she was only a composite of a Marian, the Semitic godmother and queen of heaven, Aphrodite, Marie, the Syrian version of Ishtar, Juno, the Blessed Virgin, and Moray, or Trinity of Fates, and many other versions of the great goddess. Okay. There was no Immaculate Conception. The Church or the Roman Catholics added that bullshit in there. The real Christ, which was a Judean, he was an Israelite, a Negro. He was born of his father Joseph and his mother Mary. When you read the book of the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7, it tells you that all men, even the kings, come into this existence, or matrix means what? The womb. They all come into this realm through sleep, meaning what? Sex. Okay. Let me see. That'll end this video. But, you know, even a lot of our ancestors back then were thrown off too. You know, don't get it twisted because we was in rulership that, you know, we didn't do a lot of atrocities and evil things as well. But at the same time, bickering, fighting amongst each other, kind of like what we do now in a certain sense. But, you know, this is how we lost the rulership. And of course, with the wild man, the Caucasian, spreading his disease, the Black Plague. That's why they call it the Black Plague, because it was spread through lice. They had lice diseases because they had no hygiene. Their own people tell you that even to this day, that they're not really a hygienic people. They had to be taught how to bathe, how to be civilized and everything else. And I'm not saying that, you know, to be racist. That's just a historical known fact. They'll even tell you that. So when I say it, don't think some type of way. It is what it is. But we gave them civilization. We gave them the Bible. We gave them all the spiritual or religious, whatever you choose to believe in. That was our people. But in the end, you see them still trying to uphold their white lies, their bullshit, and their narrative. But, they'll see at the end of the day. Peace and shalom.